My name is Rachel Monroe, and I'm about to tell you about the day my entire world collapsed. It wasn't a dramatic moment. There was no screaming. There was no confrontation. It was just me, sitting in my car in a parking lot, holding a piece of paper, and realizing that the two people I loved most in this world had been lying to me for 8 months. My best friend was pregnant, with my husband's baby, and nobody, not a single person, thought I deserved to know. This is the story of how I discovered that betrayal, how I survived it, and how I learned that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who hurt you the deepest. This is my story. Let me take you back to a time when I thought I had everything figured out. I'm 39 years old. I'm a pediatric nurse at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. I work with children who have serious illnesses and injuries, and it's the most meaningful work I've ever done. The hours are long, the emotional toll is heavy, but the reward is knowing that I'm making a difference in the lives of vulnerable children and their families. David is my husband of 8 years. He's a commercial real estate broker. He's charming, ambitious, and on the surface, he seemed like the perfect partner. We met at a friend's wedding in 2015. He approached me at the bar, told me I was the most beautiful woman in the room, and asked if I'd let him buy me a drink. It was cliché, but it worked. We dated for 3 years before he proposed. The proposal was nice, not elaborate or surprising, but thoughtful. We were on a weekend trip to Napa Valley. He took me to a vineyard at sunset, got down on one knee, and asked me to marry him. I said yes. We got married a year later at a country club outside of Chicago. It was a beautiful wedding. Everything I'd imagined as a girl. But here's what I didn't know. The marriage started deteriorating about 2 years in. I don't think I noticed it happening in real time. It was gradual. David started working later and later. He'd come home after I was asleep and leave before I woke up. Our conversations became transactional. How was your day? Fine. Yours? Busy. That was it. We stopped having sex. We stopped going out together. We stopped being intimate in any meaningful way. I attributed it to the stress of his job. Real estate is demanding, especially in a competitive market like Chicago. I attributed it to my job being demanding. Working with sick children takes an emotional toll. I figured we were just in a phase, that eventually things would get better. I was wrong. Then there was Sienna. Sienna Wells was my best friend. We met in nursing school 15 years ago. She was the first person I met on my first day, and we became instantly close. She was brilliant, funny, beautiful, and fiercely loyal, or so I thought. We did everything together in our 20s. We lived together for 3 years after graduation. We traveled together. We supported each other through bad breakups, career challenges, and family drama. When I got married, Sienna was my maid of honor. She gave a beautiful toast at the wedding. She cried happy tears. She told me how much she loved me and how thrilled she was that I'd found David. Sienna never married. She'd had a couple of long-term relationships, but nothing stuck. She seemed fine with that. She focused on her career. She was promoted to charge nurse at the same hospital where I worked. We saw each other almost every day at work and hung out on weekends. She was practically family. David and Sienna got along fine. Not super close, but friendly. They'd joke around. They'd have conversations at dinner parties. Nothing weird. Nothing that would make me think twice. We were a little unit. David, me, and Sienna. The three of us would go to dinner together, go to concerts, spend holidays together. It felt like a perfect friendship triangle. Everyone loved everyone. I was so naive. Looking back now, I can see all the signs I missed. The first sign was about 9 months ago. David and I were having dinner with Sienna at a restaurant downtown. Mid-conversation, Sienna excused herself to go to the bathroom. She was gone for 20 minutes. When she came back, she looked flushed and uncomfortable. David wouldn't make eye contact with her or with me. The conversation stalled. We finished dinner quickly and went home in an awkward silence. I asked David what was wrong. "Nothing," he said, "just tired from work." I didn't press him. The second sign was about 2 weeks later. Sienna called me and said she needed to take a few weeks off work for personal reasons. She didn't specify what the personal reasons were. I asked if everything was okay, and she said it was fine, she just needed some time. She sounded stressed, but again, I didn't push. She took 3 weeks off. During that time, David suddenly had to work from home. He said his company was doing some office renovations and that remote work was more efficient. He was home a lot, but he was distant. He'd work in his study with the door closed. He'd take a lot of phone calls where he'd step outside or go to the bathroom to take them. I thought he was having an affair. I worried about that for a few days. But then Sienna came back to work and things seemed to normalize. David went back to the office. Life went on. The third sign was Sienna's appearance. Over the course of a few months, I noticed that she was gaining weight. Not dramatically, but noticeably. She was usually very fit. She went to the gym 5 times a week, ate clean, was very disciplined about her body. But over the course of 3 months, she'd put on about 15 pounds. It was concentrated in her belly area, which was unusual for her body type. I asked her about it once. "You seem to be eating more," I said casually. "Are you okay? Is work stressing you out?" "I'm fine," she said. "Just going through a phase, don't worry about it." But I did worry about it. Sienna never brushed off questions about her well-being. She was usually open and honest about everything. The fact that she was deflecting made me suspicious. Then there were the moments I caught them looking at each other. We were at a dinner party at my colleague's house. About 6 months ago. Sienna and David were standing near each other in the kitchen, not speaking, but there was this moment where their eyes met, and the look between them was intimate. It was loaded with meaning. It was the kind of look that happens between two people who share something private. I felt a chill run through me. I watched them for the rest of the night, and I noticed that they were careful not to be alone together. They didn't speak much. They didn't acknowledge each other overtly, but there was this underlying tension that I couldn't ignore. I wanted to ask David about it, but I was afraid of what he might say. I was afraid of confirming something I wasn't ready to face. So I didn't ask. I just pushed the feeling down and tried to pretend I hadn't noticed anything. 3 months ago, something shifted. Sienna started avoiding me. We work at the same hospital, and previously we'd see each other multiple times a day. We'd grab coffee together. We'd eat lunch together. We'd debrief about patients and coworkers. But suddenly, she was finding reasons not to be around me. If I tried to make plans with her, she'd say she was busy. If I suggested grabbing lunch at the hospital, she'd say she was eating at her desk. If I invited her to dinner with David and me, she'd have some excuse. She was pulling away. And David was acting strange. He was spending more time at work, even though his job didn't really require it. He was taking trips to client sites that seemed vague and unnecessary. He'd come home late and say very little about his day. I realized I was married to a stranger. One night, about 3 months ago, I was lying in bed next to David, and I made a decision. I was going to find out what was going on. I waited until he fell asleep. Then I carefully got out of bed and went to his study. I opened his laptop. I knew his password. He'd told it to me years ago when we were first married, and he never changed it. I started looking through his email. What I found made me feel sick. There were emails between David and Sienna, dozens of them, going back months. They were careful. They didn't use explicit language, but the meaning was clear. They were meeting up. They were arranging times when I wouldn't be home. They were checking in with each other about appointments and how things were going. Then I found the message that changed everything. It was from Sienna to David, dated 8 months ago. "I'm pregnant. We need to figure out what we're doing. Call me when you can talk privately." David's response, sent an hour later. This changes everything. We'll figure this out. I promise. Just don't tell her yet. I need time to think about how to handle this. I felt the room spin. Sienna was pregnant, with David's baby, and they'd known for 8 months. 8 months of lying, 8 months of secret meetings, 8 months of watching me, my best friend and my husband, keeping this massive secret from me. I couldn't breathe. I was sitting in David's study, in the dark, with my hands shaking, reading emails about my life being dismantled. There were more emails. Conversations about where the baby would be born. Conversations about whether David would be involved as a father. Conversations about how to break the news to me. In one particularly cruel email, David wrote, "Rachel's already suspicious. She's noticed things. We need to be more careful. Once the baby is born, we can tell her. She'll have to accept it." They had a plan. They were going to have the baby, and then they were going to tell me, as if I was some kind of problem to be managed rather than a wife who deserved honesty. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark for a long time. I didn't confront David that night. I couldn't. I was too shocked, too angry, too devastated. I went back to bed and lay next to him, listening to him breathe, feeling like my entire life was built on a lie. The next day, I was numb. I went to work. I took care of my patients. I went through the motions, but inside I was dying. I needed to know the details. So that night, I did something I'm not proud of. I called Sienna. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice light. "I haven't seen you in forever. Want to grab coffee before work tomorrow?" There was a pause, a long pause. "Actually, I'm not feeling well," Sienna said. "I think I'm coming down with something. Can we rain check?" "Of course," I said. "No problem, feel better." I hung up and felt the confirmation of her deception settle over me like a heavy blanket. That night, I did more research. I looked through David's credit card statements. I saw charges at an OBGYN office, multiple charges over the past 8 months. I saw charges at a boutique maternity store. I saw a charge for an ultrasound at a private imaging center. David had been paying for Sienna's prenatal care. I also found an email confirmation for a hotel room reservation. 1 week from now. David had booked a hotel room for a week under his own name for personal business. 1 week. Sienna was due in 1 week. David was planning to be at the birth of his baby with my best friend, and I was supposed to just accept this when they finally told me. I went into a kind of shock for the next few days. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I'd lie in bed next to David and feel a rage so intense that I was afraid of what I might do if he touched me. I didn't confront him. I didn't say anything. I just waited. I waited to see if he would tell me. I waited to see if he would come clean. I waited to see if he would finally show me some respect by being honest. He didn't. Instead, he went about his life like everything was normal. He came home. He ate dinner. He went to work. He acted like a man without a care in the world. Meanwhile, I was slowly falling apart. I called my therapist and asked for an emergency appointment. Dr. Patricia Holmes has been my therapist for 5 years. She knows me well. When I told her what I'd discovered, she was shocked. "How are you holding up?" she asked me. "I don't know," I said. "I feel like I'm in a nightmare that I can't wake up from. The 2 people I trusted most in the world have been lying to me for 8 months. My best friend is pregnant with my husband's baby, and nobody thought I deserved to know." "Have you confronted either of them?" Patricia asked. "No," I said. "I don't know what to say. I don't know how to process this. Part of me wants to scream and cry and break things. Part of me just wants to pretend it's not happening." "Rachel," Patricia said carefully, "this is a significant betrayal. You have every right to be angry, but I want to make sure you're taking care of yourself. Have you thought about what you want to do?" I realized that I hadn't thought beyond the immediate shock. I hadn't considered what my life would look like after this secret was out in the open? I don't know, I said. I think I need to give them a chance to tell me. But if they don't, if they just let this baby be born and then spring it on me like a surprise, then I think I'm done. Done with what? Patricia asked. Done with both of them, I said. Done with the marriage, done with the friendship. I can't be with someone who lies to me like this. I can't be friends with someone who betrays me like this. That night, I made a decision. I would give them until the end of the week. If David didn't tell me about Sienna's pregnancy and the baby by Friday, I would confront him. I would demand honesty, and I would start making plans to leave. Friday came and went. David said nothing. On Saturday morning, I received a text from an unknown number. I almost didn't open it, but something made me. The text read, "Rachel, this is Dr. Michael Torres from Lincoln Hospital. Your husband David Monroe listed you as his emergency contact. Sienna Wells has gone into labor and is currently at our facility. David is on his way. We wanted to make sure you had the information in case you needed to be reached." My hands went numb. Sienna was in labor, right now, at the hospital, and David was on his way to be there. Without telling me, without preparing me, without any acknowledgement that this was happening, I called David immediately. "Where are you?" I asked, my voice shaking. I'm at work," he said. There was a pause. "Actually, I'm heading to a client meeting." "You're lying," I said. "You're heading to Lincoln Hospital. Sienna is in labor." There was complete silence. "How do you know that?" David asked finally. "I got a text from the hospital," I said. "They're wondering why you didn't tell your wife that your mistress was having your baby today." "Rachel," David said, and I could hear the panic in his voice. "I can explain." "No," I said. "You can't. There's no explanation for this. How could you do this? How could you both do this?" "It's complicated," David said. "Complicated?" I was screaming now. "It's not complicated. It's betrayal. It's a lie. It's the worst thing two people could possibly do to someone they claim to love." "I was going to tell you," David said. "After the baby was born, I was going to tell you everything." "After the baby was born," I repeated. "So you were going to let me go about my life for another week, not knowing that my husband is at the hospital watching my best friend give birth to his child. You were going to come home and act like nothing was happening." "Yes," David said quietly. "Yes, that was the plan." The honesty of that admission was somehow worse than the lie. He had a plan. He and Sienna had strategized about when and how to tell me, and they decided that I didn't deserve to know until it was absolutely necessary. "I'm done," I said. "I'm done with you. I'm done with this marriage. I'm done with all of it." "Rachel, please," David said. "Don't make any decisions right now. You're upset. Let's talk about this when I get home." "You're not coming home," I said. "Not today, not tonight. And frankly, I don't know if you're ever coming home. I need you to get out of my life, David. Both of you. I can't see either of you right now." I hung up the phone. My hands were shaking. I felt like I was going to vomit. The betrayal was so complete, so total, that I couldn't even comprehend it. I got in my car and I drove. I drove without any destination, just trying to process what was happening. Sienna was giving birth right now. David was there, supporting her, being part of this moment. And I was alone in my car, falling apart. My phone started ringing. David, Sienna. My mother, apparently David had called her. I ignored all of it. I drove to a park and I sat on a bench and I cried. I cried for the husband who lied to me. I cried for the best friend who betrayed me. I cried for the marriage that was over. I cried for the friendship that was destroyed. I cried for the future I thought I was going to have. And then, when I was out of tears, I felt something shift inside me. The pain gave way to anger. The shock gave way to clarity. I was not going to let this destroy me. I was not going to accept this betrayal silently. I was not going to be the victim in this story. I was going to fight back. I called a divorce lawyer on Monday morning. Her name was Alexandra Torres. She specialized in high-conflict divorces and infidelity cases. When I told her my story, she was professional but compassionate. "This is a significant infidelity case," Alexandra said. "And the fact that it was with your best friend adds another layer of emotional betrayal. Illinois is a no-fault divorce state, which means infidelity doesn't technically affect the division of assets. However, it does affect alimony and custody considerations, if that's relevant." "We don't have children," I said, "but there will be a child. David's child with Sienna. I need to understand what that means for me legally." "David will have financial obligations to support that child," Alexandra said. "Those obligations could affect what assets he has available to divide in the divorce settlement. But first, I want to understand your financial situation." I walked her through our assets. We had a house worth approximately $800,000 with a mortgage of $300,000. We had retirement accounts. We had some investments. Financially, we were comfortable but not wealthy. "In an Illinois divorce," Alexandra explained, "assets are typically divided equitably, though not necessarily equally. Given that you were married 8 years and both contributed to the household, you'd be entitled to approximately half of the marital assets. However, I recommend we pursue an aggressive stance given the infidelity and the fact that he was paying for another woman's medical expenses out of marital funds." "What do you mean?" I asked. "All those charges for the OBGYN, the ultrasounds, the maternity store, those were paid for using marital money," Alexandra said. "Money that belonged to both of you. He used community funds to support an affair and the resulting child. That's grounds to argue for a larger share of the assets to compensate for the funds he misappropriated." Over the next few weeks, I worked with Alexandra to build my case. I documented everything: the emails, the credit card charges, the hotel reservations, the pattern of lies. David hired his own lawyer, a man named Richard Feldman who seemed to specialize in aggressive defense tactics. Richard's strategy was clear: minimize the infidelity, focus on the no-fault nature of Illinois divorce law, and argue that I was overreacting to a situation that could be resolved amicably. "Your client betrayed his wife with her best friend and hid a pregnancy for 8 months, Alexandra said in our first mediation session. "There is nothing amicable about this. My client is seeking a divorce, and she's entitled to a fair settlement that accounts for the financial infidelity." The mediation went nowhere. Richard kept saying David was sorry and wanted to move forward, but he wasn't willing to offer any real concessions. He wanted an even split of assets and wanted to minimize alimony. "No," Alexandra said flatly. "My client gave 8 years to this marriage. She supported her husband's career. She created a home with him, and he repaid that by having an affair with her best friend and hiding the entire pregnancy. She's entitled to more than 50%. We went back and forth for weeks. David's position was that I was being vindictive and that I should just accept the no-fault divorce and move on. But I wasn't moving on. I was fighting. Eventually, after 3 months of negotiation, we reached a settlement. I received 58% of the marital assets. I kept the house. I received alimony for 3 years. David was responsible for his own attorney fees. And the settlement included a clause that he would cover a portion of my therapy costs for the trauma of the betrayal. It wasn't perfect, but it was fair, and it was vindication. The divorce was finalized 6 months after I discovered the pregnancy. David moved out. He went to live in an apartment downtown. He and Sienna are still together. They're raising their daughter together. And apparently, according to my sister who heard through mutual friends, they seem happy. The fact that they could be happy, while I was still in pieces, felt like another betrayal. I didn't go back to work for 2 months. I took medical leave. I saw my therapist twice a week. I barely left my house. I was in a deep depression that I didn't know how to pull myself out of. My family was supportive. My parents came and stayed with me for a week. My sister checked on me constantly. My colleagues sent flowers and cards, but nobody could fix the fact that the two people I'd loved most had destroyed me. As for Sienna, I never spoke to her again. She tried to call me a few times, but I didn't answer. She tried to message me, but I deleted the messages without reading them fully. I didn't want to hear her explanations or her apologies. There was nothing she could say that would undo what she'd done. I did see her once, about a year after the baby was born. I was at the grocery store and I turned a corner and there she was, pushing a stroller. She looked happy. She looked healthy. She was bouncing the baby and smiling. And I felt nothing, not sadness, not anger, just a hollow emptiness. She saw me and her face went pale. She said, "Rachel, But I just walked past her. I didn't acknowledge her. I didn't speak to her. I just kept walking. That was the last time I saw Sienna Wells. 4 years have passed since I discovered the pregnancy in that hospital text message. I'm 43 years old now. I've been divorced for 3.5 years, and I'm finally starting to feel like myself again. The first year after the divorce was the hardest. I had nightmares about David and Sienna. I had panic attacks. I spiraled into a depression that took months to climb out of. I questioned everything about myself. How did I miss the signs? How did I not see what was happening? How did I choose such terrible people to love? My therapist, Patricia, helped me understand that this wasn't about me being stupid or naive. It was about me being trusting. And that's not a character flaw. That's actually a strength. The problem wasn't that I trusted too much. The problem was that the people I trusted didn't deserve that trust. Slowly, I started rebuilding my life. I went back to work. I threw myself into my job. I found meaning in caring for my patients and their families. I remembered why I became a nurse in the first place, to help people, to make a difference, to be present for people in their most vulnerable moments. I made new friends. I joined a divorce support group and met other women who'd been through similar betrayals. I realized I wasn't alone in this experience. There were so many women who'd been lied to by the people they loved. There were so many women who'd had to rebuild their lives from scratch. I started dating again about 2 years after the divorce. Cautiously at first. I was terrified of being betrayed again. But gradually, I opened myself up to the possibility of connection. I'm currently in a relationship with a man named Marcus. He's a teacher. He's kind and honest and faithful. We take things slowly. We communicate openly. We've talked about the past, and he understands what I've been through. He doesn't try to fix me or erase my pain. He just accepts me. I'm not sure where the relationship is going. I'm trying not to get ahead of myself. But for the first time in 4 years, I feel hopeful about the future. The hardest part of my recovery wasn't the legal process or the divorce. It was forgiving myself. I had to forgive myself for trusting the wrong people. I had to forgive myself for missing the signs. I had to forgive myself for the time I spent in denial. And I'm getting there. Not all the way, but I'm getting there. As for David and Sienna, I don't think about them much anymore. I heard through mutual friends that they got married last year, that they're planning to have more children, that they're living their best lives. And you know what? I hope they're happy, not because I forgive them, not because I want them to be happy, but because I don't want to spend my energy hating them. I don't want to spend my life angry at the people who hurt me. I'm using that energy to build a life I actually want to live. What I learned from this betrayal is that the people closest to you aren't always who you think they are. People are capable of things you don't expect. People will prioritize themselves over you, sometimes without even feeling guilty about it. But that doesn't mean you should stop trusting. It means you should be more intentional about who you trust. You should pay attention to the small signs. You should listen to your intuition. You should never discount the weird feeling in your gut that something isn't right. And if someone does betray you, if someone does hurt you, you survive it. You feel the pain. You process the grief. You do the work to heal. And you come out stronger on the other side. I'm stronger now than I was before. I'm more aware. I'm more discerning about the people I let into my life. I'm more in touch with my own needs and boundaries. The betrayal broke me, but it didn't destroy me. And that's what I want people to understand about my story. You can survive betrayal. You can survive heartbreak. You can survive having your trust shattered by the people you loved most. You will get through it. It won't be easy. It will be one of the hardest things you ever do, but you will get through it. And on the other side of that pain, there's a version of you that's stronger, wiser, and more whole than you were before. My name is Rachel Monroe, and this is my story.